My mixing board, yeah, my mixing board doesn't look anything like your mixing board, right? Because we're different people. We have different issues, different strengths, different struggles. And so that's the spectrum issue, is that it is not a line. And I really like the mixing board analogy, and I think I may actually move to that. I mean, the pie chart, when you do a mixing board, you could have a pie chart of what each of those different frequencies is doing too. So yeah.
Mhm.
Um, so
Yeah.
the big misconceptions, and there's lots of them, I just picked the five that annoy me the most, are that, first of all, misconception number one. Oh, and for the folks who are just joining us, if you want to ask a question, please put question in all caps at the beginning of your question, so that at the end of the session we can scroll back through, find your questions, and and explain or answer those questions at that time. We're going to try to stop about maybe 15 minutes before the end of the session. So the first misconception number one, is autism and ADHD and other neurodivergent conditions are just childhood conditions. You grow out of it. No, you don't. I am 53 years old and I am just as autistic as when I was 3 years old, okay?
Mhm.
Misconception number two, neurodivergence is just a label for bad behavior and lack of self control. Oh, isn't that cute? No. Our brains are different from yours, and our ability to control certain things is low. And that doesn't mean that we're bad for not being able to control it. It doesn't make it bad behavior if I melt down. I'm overwhelmed.
Mhm.
Misconception number three is neurodivergent people don't know how to communicate. Well, not on the channels that neurotypical people use. No, I've already mentioned, before we started recording, that you want me to understand tone. That's like asking me to just understand Swahili. It doesn't work. And the thing is, we communicate in the same ways as neurotypicals? No. Does that mean that we're bad communicators? I don't know. I think people expecting me to figure out what they meant because they implied it with their tone instead of, using their words. Maybe they're the ones who aren't communicating well. Just saying. Okay.
Mhm.
Misconception number four, there are high functioning and low functioning neurodivergent people. No, because that goes back to that idea that the spectrum is a straight line. It's not. Okay. The terms that are currently used instead of high functioning and low functioning is, I call high functioning high faking. I'm
Mhm.
doing a really good job at making you think I'm neurotypical. Are there times when I can't do that? Yeah, there are times when I suck at it, and then suddenly I would be labeled low functioning by these people who want the functioning labels. What the current verbiage is high support needs and low support needs. And there are times when I have very high support needs. And then there are times when my support needs are like this. I might need someone to say, hey, don't talk forever. Okay. So then the fifth misconception is being neurotypical can be taught. The goal should be to make neurodivergent people into neurotypicals. And see also here, neurodivergence can and should be cured. So those are the five main misconceptions, and I'm going to put them in the chat so that our other panelists can get a copy of them. So here's our misconceptions, okay? And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to throw this to the panel, and any of you can start. I don't want to pick on people. I just want, which of you wants to start, go ahead and start, and we'll, just pick a misconception and say, this is how this affects me as a filker.
That's difficult for me
Mhm.
because I never really thought about how it affected me specifically in relation to Phil, because it affects me in just about everything.
Mhm.
You know, I can tell you that um, when I was young, a small child, so ASD or autism spectrum disorder was not understood nearly the way it is today. And I was diagnosed as being hyperactive and medicated with both dexedrine and thorazine daily for at least a year.
Mhm.
And I still don't know whether that actually helped me or did damage to my neurotypicality.
Mhm.
But shyness, I think, may be a characteristic of my particular constellation of neurodivergent symptoms. And it makes you intimidated in a room full of people who are very much better known. Some of them have recordings out. A lot of them have instruments, guitars, harps, drums, what have you. And I had to learn to assert myself in a circle early on. And one of my friends, Lynn Gold, and said she noticed that I had a voice that could cut through a room full of people with guitars. That was a necessity for me, pretty much, because
Mhm.
I can't play guitar or piano and sing to save my life. I just don't have the manual dexterity.
Yeah, and what you said about having a voice that cuts through a room. My husband Joe, who many of you met at Circle last night, he was in the SCA for a long time as a herald, and
Mhm.
people would say they could hear him from the freeway. When he wants to cut through a room, it's he's kind of like Andre the Giant in The Princess Bride. Everybody move, and
Yes.
everyone turns around and sees him. Well, but I, despite being a singer, I can't do that either. And I will say that that was one of the things that intimidated me was the so-called chaos circle.
Mhm.
It's just you have to speak
Yeah.
up. Well, that's going to marginalize a lot of people.
Yeah.
I really don't like the chaos circle because to me, the chaos circle is the loudest people in the room and the most extroverted people in the room are the ones who get to play, and everybody else has to sit down and shut up because you can't yell loud enough to get the attention. And I don't think it's fair. I think chaos circle is a very neurotypical way of doing a circle, and it's
Well,
a
some of
very
us have recognized that,
Mhm.
and we make a point of trying to encourage people who haven't been heard from
Mhm.
to speak up or sing.
Mhm.
Kathy Marr is someone who does that also,
Yeah.
Mhm.
because I didn't have that many people encouraging me, as I recall, although some did.
Mhm.
And I want to be that for somebody else who is just discovering folk and just coming into the community.
Mhm. And that's one of the things that, I mean, we are talking about, okay, how can the Filk community make it less difficult for those of us who are ND, which is the majority of us, let's be honest.
Mhm.
And one of the ways is to say, okay, we are going to make sure that, maybe everybody make it just a standard thing at a circle, find the person that has the talent and just say, and ask them first, don't put them on the spot. Say, do you want me to say, hey, David should play something for us? Because the other thing is, let's not put people on the spot either in
Yeah.
encouraging, because my husband is not a singer and he had nothing prepared and felt very put on the spot when they said, oh, why don't you play? And he got up and left the circle because he felt like he was being pressured to do something. So we want to avoid that too. But I
Yeah.
think that, maybe what we could do is newer people, let's partner them with someone who is, an experienced person who can say, all right, I'm going to go. And then
I
Dave,
see you, Am.
so, all
Can
right.
I put in something here?
Yeah, absolutely.
There's another innovation I've seen, which I think is helpful for people like us, which is the poker chip bardic.
Hmm.
That people are given poker chips or some other token, and if they want to sing something, they toss it into the middle of the room.
Hmm.
They get recognized. And if several people toss around the same time, then a queue gets established.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the queue,
So
the
I'm
queue is
gonna
first
I'm
place.
gonna pop in on the other side.
Yeah, go ahead.
I thrive in chaos, and I find Bardic circles that are too large intensely frustrating. I was at a poker chip Bardic with Kathy Marr, and I had thrown in my chip, and then I realized it was going to be 3 or 4 hours before I got to go again, and I just tuned out because I was not able to be thinking about what song can I have ready next. And um and I used to be a lot more of a Phil Cog than I am now. And partly that came from getting my mental health under control. So I also want to push back a little bit at the social model of disability because I think there's so like I have a bona fide mental illness. I'm bipolar, and there was a point when it was not okay, and it was me that was not okay. There was nothing the world could have done to accommodate, oh, it's an unreasonable assumption for the world that you don't go crazy and hurt people. No,
Hmm.
the world gets to expect that you don't go crazy and hurt people.
Yes.
And the Filt community gets to expect that if you're in a chaos circle, you don't go every other turn. Um,
Mhm.
and so getting, yeah, just a little, a little
Yeah.
perked up.
Well,
But I think like there's it's really hard to understand how these things work while being both like I appreciate the like there's no high functioning and low functioning. I think of high functioning and low functioning in terms of today, am I able to meet my goals, not
Mhm.
other people's goals for me? And there are days when I can meet my own goals, and those are high functioning days. And there are days when I can't meet my own goals, and those are low functioning days. And the idea that,
Right.
well, those if you have goals for yourself that you can't meet because of your difficulties, well, those are just unfair expectations pressed upon you by an external world. That's not always true, right?
No,
We're
but
allowed to
what I
have
was
our own goals that we have difficulty meeting, and we can
right.
talk about high and low functioning in reference to those.
Well, but the thing is, then it's still, if you are high functioning on a certain day, you don't need support, so you're low support needs.
Right, exactly.
The problem, Benjamin, with those two labels is that they then become, it's a permanent. You're either high functioning or you're low functioning as a like a gestalt. Like if you're high
Yeah,
functioning, then you're
that's
always high
definitely
functioning
false.
and you never need help, right? And I think that the perception that you've got of, and I see you, Halo, is that, you know, you're always high functioning isn't a valid label, and you're talking about on a day-to-day basis, it fluctuates, right?
Yeah,
But that's the whole point of getting rid of the functioning labels and saying, right now, I need a lot of support because this is a noisy room and there's a goddamn fluorescent light that's going bzz, 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 and I know none of the rest of you can hear it, but it's driving me crazy, you know. And then there's low support needs where I'm fine, everything is fine, there's nothing here that's really bugging me. And sometimes, yes, it does take medication. Like a lot of people with ADHD, they
yeah.
would self-medicate with caffeine. I
Mhm.
had an ex who literally drank two-liter bottles of Mountain Dew a day in order to just function. So I hear you on
Mountain
that.
Dew
Yeah.
has caffeine.
Oh, you think? Okay, Halo, you've been very patient.
So there's a little bit of actually the social model and the medical model of disability work in tandem. It's not an either or thing, it's a both and. So like to hear what you're saying, and absolutely like from my own perspective, I was late diagnosed ADHD. They think I'm probably autistic as well, but I haven't gone through the process for that, etc., etc. I have Erlin, so the bright lights burn my brain out.
Hmm.
Like that, trying to deal with what text on white paper burns my brain out. And my computer currently, so here is where two of those things on a medical basis have intersected for me and caused problems, is that my computer updated something and I now can't turn the brightness down. So whenever I use my computer, it makes my brain work overtime. It starts the Erlin basically makes everything fire too much is the way it is, and it feels like I'm burning my brain out. And the ADHD has made it very, I still haven't fixed that. There's going to be an easy fix where I just Google, what do I do with this? What was the latest update that did this? And then go through the steps. And it should only take me half an hour. But actually, my ability to do that is impaired by my brain functioning.
Hmm.
Um, so that like is kind of the neurobiological pieces, the medical model, and I'm unmedicated because there is a stupidly long wait list for medication even once they've said you can get it over here. So those pieces, that medical thing, but actually out in the world, a lot of the ways in which I engage with the world, if society was more accepting of the ways that I am, if there were accommodations in place, I struggle less than if there aren't accommodations in place. One example of this is my timekeeping is shocking. This is an ADHD thing for me. And when I am, basically, I make circles of friends with people who are okay with that. Like, that's how it works.
Hmm.
When I encounter people in situations where it's not okay, I really struggle and I need help.
Hmm.
Um, but when I'm in spaces where people are a little bit flexible and like turning up 5 minutes late isn't taken as a moral failing or as a personal slight, it's like, no, actually, I just got distracted and mismanaged my thing because I couldn't visualize how everything worked and all of these different things. So ADHD, one of the main things for people who don't know, it's described as being you're hyperactive and you can't focus, but actually it's more an executive functioning issue in terms of how you're able to manage your focus, how you're able to visualize things, etc., etc., etc. Now, for me, actually, a lot of my ADHD is a positive when it comes to creativity. when it comes to creating, because I get very excited about things, I get very passionate about it, I get very deep into it very quickly, and that hyper focus I can channel in when I hit something that's of interest. So, but that then comes at a detriment to other parts of my life, like when I forget to eat for a day, or
You too, huh?
yeah.
Yeah, my husband has actually made me create alarms that say, "Go have lunch." And they're like, "Oh, okay," because otherwise I'm so deep in what I'm doing that. So I
Yeah.
want to address what you just said about executive function, because this is it's a big long word, and a big long term, and it sounds scary. And yes, I agree with Andrew. Kathy is totally a goddess. Um, Executive function, if you've ever played a video game that has like World of Warcraft, for example, right, and you want to use some spell and you try to use it, but it's still on cooldown, and it says, I can't use that yet. We can't do that yet. That is what executive dysfunction is like, where like Halo's saying, I show up 5 minutes late. Well, that's because her ability to initiate a task is still on cooldown. Her brain won't do it. It's just her brain's, I'm sorry, we can't do that yet. We can't do the turn on the computer and open Zoom part yet. It's still on cooldown
Yeah,
from
we don't have enough juice to do it, and
Exactly.
and it's like on a biological level, a neurobiological level, they reckon it's because of dopamine and a couple of other chemicals, and basically your brain doesn't have enough fuel to connect up the neurons to do the task. So you
Yeah.
have to wait until your brain's generated enough fuel. And one way you can do that, hence what you were talking about earlier about deadlines and leaving things to the last minute and in a crisis, is then you're using adrenaline because you're using stress. And this is why things like skirmishes are really good for a lot of people. And this is why chaos circles can be good for other people, where, like, for some people it's not great, but for other people it is, because you're not waiting and getting that cool down and that sort of bit where you're understimulated and therefore distracted, and it's go 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 go. So that adrenaline then lets your brain engage and jump in.
Right. I like what Bacha just said about, I've heard executive dysfunction described as hungry, but all the food in the house is illegal.
Yes.
The brain just nopes out. The brain's like, nope, I don't care that you're hungry. We don't have the proper, and that's another thing that happens a lot with neurodiverse people is same foods. Is everybody here on the panel, do you guys do same foods? Because for me, it's like, if I could just eat the same thing every single day, that would be such a relief. I wouldn't have to think about it. I could just
No,
eat
I
the
want variety myself.
Yeah, and see, for me, variety means more steps, it's more complex, and there may be something that my brain just suddenly says, this used to be our favorite food, but now I can't stand it. It's when same food dies, and then suddenly you've got a house where you have, 12 packages of Oreo cookies, and those were your same food, and now you can't stand eating them.
Raspberry Puff Tarts.
That's another thing that happens. So, and
Yeah,
so
I mean, I certainly have.
Actually,
meal
I
pl-
think I may
certainly
have seen foods, but on different days.
Yes.
Like,
I
had
certainly have meal
a
plans
selection
that I
of
return
foods.
to over and over again.
meal plans, right?
breakfast.
But then there's your meal plan, right? And the meal plan is the same food every single week. You're going to eat the
No.
same time,
No,
or
not
something
like that.
See, so for me, my autism is my biggest thing. My ADHD is there too. Like I've had ADHD really prominent for the last 2 weeks. The ADHD part of my brain has been noping out on any plans and any schedules, and you don't want to see my to-do list because it's scary. But I want to go back to what Halo said about creativity. So one of the things that for me, interacting with other people who understand the world the way I do, and by this, in this case, I'm talking about other musicians, is such a huge creative boost for me. Okay. I mean, watching just on Friday, there were 3 concerts on Friday. By the end of the 3rd concert, I had notes down and some lyrics written for 4 different new songs. Have I finished them all yet? No. Do I still have a song that I promised somebody I would finish back in May? Yes. Am I ashamed? Yes. But the ADHD has been kind of prominent. I'm hoping I can harness that. Ooh, I've been at a con around a lot of other creative people. Maybe now I can channel that into finishing this song, which, by the way, is going to be about Stabby the Roomba. I'm just saying. And so the thing is that I'm seeing a lot of really good suggestions in the chat, but I can't follow the chat and follow the maintaining the panel at the same time. And I do want to make sure everybody gets a chance to hear. One person said, having trouble multitasking. Yeah, multitasking is the bane of my existence. I can't. I monotask. And when I monotask, most people call that hyperfocus, right?
Mhm.
When I got back, when I was during FOM and then I went to consonance and came back, I have written 30 songs since I started FOM. And that's a lot. Okay. But did I neglect my regular day job? Yes. Because my brain didn't want to think about grading papers. It wanted to think about writing these 3 new songs, damn it. That was more important, right? And so being able to prioritize, multitask, and say, I still have to do this even though I really want to do all those other things. For me, that's one of the places where my neurodiversity interacts with being a filker, being a songwriter, being a performer. And then, yeah.
Whereas
So-
conversely, I always need to have a lot of different projects on the go because I don't know which thing is going to be the thing that my brain wants to do that day. And one of the best ways I've found of getting things finished. So when I did my PhD, I finished writing 2 books that I got published and a erotic novella. I created a storytelling show, and all of those things happened because I needed something to procrastinate on my PhD with. And then when I'd get to the end of those
You
things,
too, huh?
I needed to procrastinate on those, so I'd go and work on a chapter of my PhD. So I finish projects by procrastinating constantly on different things.
It's something that
so
I
I've got
said
so
I've
many
had,
balls in the air.
The best way to make housework look fascinating is to have to get something done for my job.
Yep.
Then housework becomes organized,
Yep.
then the whole apartment is clean. Okay, so Benjamin, we've heard a lot from Halo and quite a bit from Matt. I'd like to hear a little more from you just to make sure that we all get about equal time.
Sure. So I could talk about bipolar disorder and creativity for a long time. Bipolar disorder may be one of the few serious mental illnesses that actually offers just a straight up bonus to creativity skill checks. The problem is that if you roll too high, you can go over and take sanity damage.
And then sanity becomes your dump stat.
Yeah, exactly.
Which doesn't work very well.
So during the period that I call the Year of Madness, which was my one and hopefully only really serious manic episode, which lasted for most of a year, things sort of gradually escalated, and the songs got. I wrote a lot of songs, and if you look at the songs over the course of that year, they get better and better and better. And in May, I wrote "The Secret of the Festival of Sandcastles," which is one of my best songs ever. And then there's a sort of turning point, and after that, the songs stop making sense. Most of the songs, there are a few songs written after that point that have not been released because they're nonsense, or they're like weird mythology that twists around on itself and doesn't make sense. Some of them are still in the process of being salvaged.
Heavy songs where if people
like-
want context, then the song doesn't make any sense.
But there is no like the context is just here. It's not possible to explain to anybody else. But yeah, I don't know if people are familiar with bipolar disorder as a concept, but your mood goes up and down, and that affects your energy level, the speed at which you think and speak. I often talk about sort of like the way creativity works is that you've got these 2 little demons in there. One of them just produces ideas, and they may be good ideas, they may be bad ideas, they may be nonsense, they may be crap, whatever. And the other demon stamps them approved or unapproved. And like we talk a lot about overcoming your inner critic and like telling that demon with the unapproved stamp to slow down so that something can get out. But what happens when you're manic is that the demon who produces the ideas is working way too fast, and the demon with the stamp can't keep up. So that like even if the critic would have had time, he would have marked that nonsense idea as non-approved. But he just wasn't fast enough.
And I'll say that I understand about so I want to talk for a moment about mania. So back in the day, and I'll just put this out there, they were trying everything on me to get rid of my suicidal depression. They tried like 6 different meds. One of them made me stutter, so they stopped that one. Another one made me projectile vomit, so they stopped that one. Every single one of them had a very bad side effect. But the best bad side effect, Wellbutrin. I took Wellbutrin, and I apparently, and they didn't know this in 1999, I am one of the 5% of people who, if you give them Wellbutrin, they develop mania. I had a 5-month-long manic break.
Other than
I had about an hour of sleep a night. I started smoking, which, as a singer, you're not supposed. And I was just social smoking. I put 35,000 miles on my car in 5 months. Now, granted, I live in Southern California, so it's not that hard to do that.
You have to drive everywhere, right?
You have to, but it still was an achievement. And what you said about your brain going faster and faster and faster, I could not keep up. And the autistic part of my mind was going, this isn't normal. But the non-autistic, the manic part of my brain was going, yes, but we got to do that, and we got to do that, and we got to do that. And it really was that fast. I could not understand my own thoughts. That's
Oh
how
my
fast
fucking
it was.
goodness. It's
So, and then-
insane, right?
and then I went off Wellbutrin, and I plowed a trench approximately as deep as the Marianas.
Yep. Which that's typical. After the end of a big manic episode, you have a big episode.
Oh, yeah. So I've only had it
Uh.
happen once. I won't take antidepressants because of it, but they also figured
Yeah.
out.
So
Well, actually-
oddly enough, as someone who's bipolar and will become manic if I don't take Zyprexa,
Mhm.
I do take Wellbutrin. I take a very small amount of Wellbutrin seasonally in winter, and because my depression is seasonal.
Right.
And that just
Brain.
takes the edge off, and I've never had any weird side effects from it.
Mhm.
So it's like clockwork. It's like daylight savings time, right? At the end of daylight savings time, we start the Wellbutrin. At the beginning of daylight savings time, we stop the Wellbutrin. It's like clockwork,
Mhm.
and it's fine. But like everybody's response to medication is different, and you just have to know.
Mhm. And that's where, and that's, so to go back to what you said about the medical model is not entirely wrong. No, it's not. There are things that can be addressed medically, but
Yeah.
the medical model is saying we need to fix this person so they aren't neurodiverse anymore.
Yeah,
To
like
make
I,
them
So
indistinguishable from their normal peers was what I don't even want to say his name. The guy who came up with ABA, which is the behaviorist treatment to force autistics to not be autistic anymore. It's basically just traumatize them until they give in, right? Until they mask all the time.
Halo's got a hand up.
My problem with the medical model is we must fix it and cure you. And curing means turning you neurotypical. I've had people say, don't you want to be not autistic? Wouldn't you rather, remove the autism? I'm all, you remove the autism, I'm not me. You remove my ADHD, my creativity is gone. You get rid of the fact that I have, a certain amount of, and I think that Lee's comment right now in the chat is correct. The medical model works better for bipolar than for autism. It also works somewhat better for ADHD in terms of, look, if you have this stimulant every day, focus happens, which is amazing, right? I mean, there are people who are trying to get the name of ADHD changed. It'll never happen because, of course, it's entrenched, but to make it more about managing focus. How much ability do you have to manage focus? It's not a deficit of attention. Often it's too much attention.
Yep.
And how do you, my ex who had severe ADHD said, it's like I'm strapped in a chair and someone else has the remote for the TV and they're changing the channel about every 20 seconds.
That's exactly how I've described mine.
Mm-hmm. I'm sorry, say again, Matt?
That's exactly how I describe mine.
Someone else has the remote,
Neurodivergence.
yeah?
Like someone else is flipping the channels on a TV every
Mhm.
20 seconds.
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
And it's like,
whereas
Can't control
whereas
your...
for me there's something slightly different in that I feel like and there was a question about terminology. I feel like I am the adult me, but the part of me that is in control of the steering wheel is the 6-year-old part of me and has the impulse control of the 6-year-old part of me and the distractibility of the 6-year-old part of me, and the adult part of me is there going, no, we need to wash up now, or no, we don't need to wash up now, don't put your hands in the boiling hot water, ow, that hurts, no, please don't do that, and repeatedly doing it because the 6-year-old's in control.
Right.
So yeah, it's kind of a similar sort of, for me it's more of an impulse control thing. But someone asked and said, I thought they got rid of ADHD and went back to ADD. No, it was the other way round. So the attention deficit hyperactivity disorder is what ADHD stands for. For a while, they described it as being ADHD and ADD, which is just attention deficit disorder, so the two being separate. More recently, they've realized that the hyperactivity in people who they were labeling ADD is actually more internalized, so it's still present, so they've just put it all under the banner of ADHD. I also wanted to pick up a piece of terminology around neurodiverse, neurodivergent, neurodiversity, and I think this ties into all the things that we've been saying, if I may. So neurodiversity, it is a kind of, it's a model, it's a social movement, right? Within that, what it describes is that everyone, so someone in the comments said medication affects everyone differently, including neurotypicals. Yes, that's because humans are neurodiverse. We are all neurodiverse, whether neurotypical or neurodivergent. And those two terms are describing parts of like the bell curve within that neurodiversity. So the neurotypical brain is sort of the 80%, 70-80% in the middle that are kind of fairly standard, and then when they diverge enough from that standard, that's when the label neurodivergent is picked up, and which is why we have so many different conditions and brain types under that, including bipolar ADHD, autism, dyslexia, and brain injury. So, you know, all of these things become neurodivergent, fall under that umbrella. So it's that there's that bit of language about we are all neurodiverse. Neurodiversity is a fact of human existence, and that's why we're all so different. We all have different support needs, and the support needs for neurotypical people are mostly catered for.
Yeah, and that's the thing
And
about
that's
exactly neurotypicality. You know, if a neurotypical says, I have a headache, oh, well, then we get you some aspirin, we get you, you know, maybe an ice pack, we get you into a quiet, dark place. But if a neurodiverse person, if a neurodivergent person says, this light, this noise is giving me a headache, we're told to just suck it up and deal. Because everybody
they can't
else
hear
can
it.
handle it. So what's, you know, until I was moved to completely online teaching, which is because a different set of diversity, because I am a fat, my insurance company will not pay for the MRI that my knee needs so that I can get the same knee surgery that Lem just went through. And so I can't walk very far without falling down because my balance is for shit. But before they moved me to completely online teaching, we were teaching in buildings that were like built in the 1960s with all that implies about fluorescent lighting. And I would come in and shut the lights off and the students would say, well, I can't see. And I'm all, I can't handle the noise from these dying bulbs. And they would all say, I can't hear it. And I'm like, but I can. And it feels like somebody stuck a dentist drill in my ear. I can't stand fluorescent lights. If I could outlaw one thing, it would be fluorescence. But anyway, and so the thing is that one of the biggest issues, it sounds like our neurodiversity informs our creativity in a positive way. You know, and even what you were talking about, Ben, while you were manic, you could write song after song after song after song, and for a long time they made sense, right?
Yeah. So like so as someone with a physics background, I rate my mood on a scale out of 1.0. Right? So 1.0 is normal, and like it's pretty easy to like it's not controversial. It's pretty easy to tell what's normal, at least on that measure. And I do my best songwriting around 1.05 to 1.1. Anything about like this is physics, so like the normal range is not very wide in numerical on that numerical scale. Anything above like 1.2, you start to have real trouble.
And then, but what I'm saying is that we have all noted that there are situations inside the Philk community, let's call it that, okay, at cons, whether they are online cons or more, you know, I think more importantly, in-person cons, where certain neurotypical expectations are still bleeding into how we do the thing. And I've seen a lot of discussion in the chat about how do we fix this? You know, how do we make it so that a chaos circle is chaotic enough for the people who need that, but not so chaotic that people who need a line to stand in, that they need to know, okay, 4 people from now, it's my turn, so I better start getting ready. You know, how do we do this, right? And for me, yeah, I wish I could wear sunglasses, but unfortunately, you see these bottle bottoms? Without them, I'm legally blind. I can't see. So and they tried putting the darky thing on them, but that only works out in sunlight. You know, when you walk into the inside, the darky thing goes away, and now I've got clear non sunglasses that make my headaches, you know, worse. So anyway, the thing is that I think maybe what we might want to have, and I'm not saying that we can do it right now. I mean, we've got 15 minutes left, and I want to start going over the questions that we've been seeing in the chat, and is that there is a certain set of expectations about the ability to control the brain, the ability to control the body, the ability to understand things like facial expression and tone of voice and so forth. And I think also as musicians, it's assumed that of course you understand tone of voice. No, I don't. I can't understand tone. Or rather, I will hear it and I will know that something is different about the way you're talking because I'm a musician, I can hear that much. But can I turn that into meaningful information? Anywhere from 3 minutes to 3 years from now, but not in the moment, never in the moment. Okay, I have a PhD in sociology, and you know why? Because I wanted to figure out how people in groups worked, because they didn't make fucking sense to me. I started out with psychology, and then I realized psychology is not going to tell me why people look at me funny when I say things. I have to find something, and then I took a sociology elective, and I'm like, oh, this will be the key. I have found it. Well, you know what? I have a PhD, and I still don't understand people in groups. And my dean said to me, well, can't we give you like a social skills class or something? Sir, I've got a PhD in this, and if I've got a PhD and it hasn't helped me, your social skills class is not going to fix the problem, okay? You just have to deal with the fact that this is how I interact with people, and they don't like it, but they have to give me accommodations because of the ADA in the United States. The Americans with Disabilities Act says if a person has a documented disability, you can't penalize them for things that are part of their disability, like not hearing tone. You know, or not being able to walk their car to the classroom.
A microbiologist may have a PhD in microbiology when paired with a scanning electron microscope and still not be able to see bacteria without the scanning electron microscope.
Yep.
So yeah.
So that, like, you started that piece off with the, like, people are asking, how do we fix these things? How do we make it better? And in terms of, like, as an example, the chaos circle versus the bardic circle situation, that to me seems like, well, we've got people with conflicting needs, conflicting support needs, and that happens. So the key is for everyone to just have an awareness that people are going to need different things, and when someone says, oh, that doesn't work for me, go, okay, well, we've got a bardic circle over here, we've got a chaos circle over here. Go for the one that works best for you and have that space for both options for the different brains. And that's one example, that's one concrete example, but there are lots of others. Like if someone says, I can't see, I can't think because the lights are too loud. Go, rather than going, well, that's ridiculous, which is natural, if you can't hear the lights, you know, go, oh, that sounds ridiculous to me, but okay, I get your brain works differently. How can we make this easier?
At some autism, for example, they have different ribbons that you can put on your name tag to say, you know, like no hugs, or I need space, or what, you know, and the color, like if you're wearing a yellow no hugs ribbon, everybody knows not to hug you. Even if you're normally a hugger, this person can't tolerate being hugged, so don't hug them, right? Maybe we could have something like that says lights, please, or, you know, or chaos only, or bardic only, or, you know, so that we don't. And I think, and this is the last piece, and then I'm going to look at the questions. And I want to say, first of all, can we give our panel a round of, you know, of jazz hands, please? Because I think they've all been excellent, and this has been such a great panel, and I'm so proud of all three of you. I'm so thankful that you were all here. Is that we need to know that out in the non-filk world, we already get penalized plenty for not being able to deal with fluorescent lights, or not being able to deal with chaotic situations, or not being able to deal with noise, or not being able to deal with a certain smell. So maybe we could, you know, make a practice of saying your brain is different and that's okay. You know, maybe we could do something like that. And I've seen a lot of, you know, really good suggestions. I think the idea of let's have If there are two ballrooms that are having circles, this is the Chaos Ballroom, that's the Bardic Ballroom.
Or different
I
times.
also think, what's that?
Different times rather than different spaces, because as people have pointed out, sometimes if you've got a popular filker in one, then that leaves the few that are the other style like on their
And I
own.
think that Robin's comment about, what if you have multiple instruments? Then you got to pick one and stay there, right? And so, and yeah, thank you, Andrew. The arm ribbons in green, yellow, and red. Green is yes, you can hug me. Yellow is ask before you do it. Red is don't even ask.
Yeah.
Right? Just and that is another thing that a lot of neurodiverse people have an issue with, right? Is that, I don't like being touched, or you're touching me without me being okay with it. Maybe I'm okay. Maybe I was okay with it this morning, but now at the end of the day, I'm tired and I just can't handle touch now,
Maybe I was okay with this hug for the first 2.5 seconds, but now it's second 3 and I'm done.
Yeah, exactly. Like, right.
Right.
Okay. So
I think another thing that's really important to say about open filk from this point of view is that sort of open filk is the evolution of activity at science fiction conventions that didn't used to be part of the program. It used to just happen organically. But one of the things that I think is really necessary for all kinds of filkers, but especially neurodivergent filkers, and people to manage their expectations and their needs, is to recognize open filk is program, and people who are planning conventions should program it. Not necessarily like this person is going to be hosting in this room at this time, although that's not a bad idea, but like open filk is the large part of what people come to conventions for. Come to filk conventions for, and if you want a good convention, the ConCom has to put energy into making sure that it's going to work and not just let things bubble up out of the ground, because sometimes that doesn't work.
This is actually in part an accessibility issue, right? It's an accommodation, it's an accessibility issue. And that absolutely should be something that's on the ConCom's radar. Maybe there needs to be a part of the ConCom whose job it is accommodations. Not just for, and I know there's in most cons, there should be already someone who's there whose job it is to make sure that, for example, wheelchair users aren't going to have a problem using the hotel, right? But this is something where people who need to use certain kinds of wheelchairs for their brain also need accommodations. And so maybe we need to put that on the radar as, hey, if you're running a con, someone on ConCom needs to be aware of this, maybe create some kind of system to help, not necessarily make it perfectly smooth, but even out the bumps a little bit, right? Okay, so I'm going through the chat. We've got 7 minutes, and I want to make sure we use the best of our time. So at this point, panelists, we have a question about how does introvertedness and extrovertedness fit into this? And the answer is introversion and extroversion are completely separate from neurodivergency, because there are introverts who are neurotypical and there are extroverts who are neurodivergent. And so it's a separate thing. But it is a thing that we also need to be aware of, is that there are a lot of people whose neurodivergence makes them more introverted, or makes it necessary that they pull away for a while and go cool off in their hotel room and chill out because there's just too much stimulation, right? So it's not quite the same thing, but I can see that that's a misconception that we might want to address maybe in another panel. Maybe we'll do another panel sometime.
Also, as an addition to that, if I may, we can also be understimulated. So being overstimulated can be an issue, being understimulated is an issue. I am one of these people who will have the radio on while I'm watching a television program because I need that extra stimulation to keep my brain going.
And this
For someone else?
This morning I was playing, I found the Tomfoolery London 2006 review, and I was listening to it, but then I turned it off because I needed to be able to focus on sorting out my pills for my pillbox. And my husband said, "Why'd you turn the music off?" And I'm all, because I can't focus. Because there's too much going on. So there's the overstimulation part, right? We have Jane Bartson asking, would Bardic circles be better for you? We actually did a lot of discussion of that. So I think that's probably been, it's now been answered. That was a main focus, I think, of what we were talking about. But if it doesn't feel like it's been answered, Jane, then by absolutely ask another question. I am scrolling down. I'm just looking for question. There's a lot of wonderful discussion. I am going to save this chat because, my God, we've had such great discussion, folks. Let's see.
It's generally easier to save the discussion and then search it in a text search to find things.
Oh, okay. Let me do that then. Let's see if it allows me. Oh, look, it says show in Finder. I never knew that it would do that. Okay, something new that I just learned about Zoom. Okay, let me look for the word question instead of scrolling and scrolling and going, where is it? Okay, so let's go.
But yeah, so in terms of accommodation, while you're looking for those questions, it is very much that we're all human together, we're all different together. And if the people programming things can do their best to look at accessibility and a variety of spaces and take that into account and be open to people with different support needs coming to them, that really helps. But the key thing for me has always been that thing of, if everyone else in the space is aware that we might all be different and that there is that neurodiversity, particularly in a creative Filk space, and we're prepared to accommodate each other and to listen to each other, that goes an awfully long way to making a difference.
I think one thing that I'm really going to take away from this discussion is the idea of the sliders. Maybe what we do is we have a standard badge that has sliders for like 6 or 7 things that are really need accommodations, and we just get the badge with the sliders, and we put the sliders, I'm high on this, medium on this, low on this. So if you have somebody who is high on overstimulation, not to take them into the chaos circle, because that's just going to make them crazier. But if they're low on stimulation, then take them into the chaos circle because they need that stimulation, right? So I'm also searching for question marks because some people did not preface their questions with the word question. We have Jane asking, I was not familiar with the term ABA. It sounds horrible. It's equivalent to conversion therapy. Yeah, the same guy came up with both. And it is exactly the same thing. Force them through aversion therapy or therapy, let's put that in quotes, to not be who they are. Could we ask the OVFF Concom to indicate which ones are Bardic or Chaos or whatever in the program book? Exactly, that's what we've been talking about. We have, let's see, trying to find, okay, that's actually a verse, that's not a question. Okay, so is Filk hogging in some cases just someone being neurodivergent in terms of not being able to consider others' needs, just wanting in the moment to jump in? So I will say this. I actually have extreme difficulty understanding when it's okay to jump in a circle, in a conversation, in any interaction. I'm sitting there going, okay, and there's a part of my brain that is literally saying, okay, well, they just raised their eyebrows, so that means I should probably say something, except wait, they're talking, so I can't say anything yet. Oh shit, I forgot what I was going to say. Okay, well, it's gone now. Okay, and that I think is a fairly common experience for a lot of people who are neurodiverse or neurodivergent is, I don't know when it's okay to step in. I remember standing at the last circle at Consonance, and it was a chaos circle, and I'm like, okay, well, I went like 4 people ago, but there's 35 people in the room, so I don't know how long should I wait longer? And finally I had to say, I know I only went 2 people ago, but could I go one more time, because then I have to go to bed because I'm exhausted. And everybody was very kind about it, but I still left feeling like a horse's ass because I felt like I had transgressed some unwritten rule. And that's the other thing, the unwritten rules. We really need to have like a list of, at Filks, this is a common, unstated but understood rule. Do this, but not that. Do that, but not the other thing. These are things that are okay. These are things that are not okay. Because those are all based on nonverbals, and I'm never going to get them. I need somebody to give me a written guidebook to say, this is what you can and cannot do at a chaos circle, at a bardic circle. This is what you should probably not talk about. These are the things these are kind of, don't mention this particular filker at this con, because then you'll have
First, a lot of that is regional, right?
And a lot of it is regional.
It's not going to. Nobody's going to be able to put together a flyer that every con can post because it's not the same at every con.
But that's what I'm saying.
Now we have multiple. In addition to our various in-person conventions that are ramping back up again, we've got multiple online venues which attract many of the same people, but not exactly the same people, and also all have their own traditions.
Well, but then what I'm
some of which are cultural and some of which are technological now.
But what I'm arguing is that then on those regional cons, someone on the Concom needs to make that list for the people at the con to say, at this con, at OVFF, or at Consonance, or at Conflict, or whatever con it is, here's the standards, here's the norms, because that's been the hardest thing for me. And I'll say this as a new neurodivergent filker, that's been the most intimidating thing for me. I don't know the norms, and there is no way to find them out unless someone tells me in words, this is the norm.
Yeah, I think
Otherwise, I
Lee
only find out that I screwed up by breaking it. Like I didn't know.
put their finger on it though by saying often the neurotypical people don't know the norms either. They are just able to enforce them.
So what we need to do is raise awareness about, hey, there's a lot of people who don't know how to figure out the norms, and you need to think about what are the norms. Because like I tripped over something, my first circle or my second circle, where I didn't realize that some people were very annoyed that I was explaining a little bit about my song before singing it. If I had known not to talk about my songs, I probably wouldn't have played most of them, but at least I wouldn't have broken that norm. But I did.
Okay.
And I
I
regret
hate
it
to-
now.
It's
So-
time for us to wrap up.
I
it's
hate
time
to-
for us to wrap up. Thank you all so much. Applause for the panel, please, because they did
Thank
a great
you.
job. And thank you, Mark, for breaking in because I was trying to figure out how to end.
Yeah,
Okay.
that was a great panel. Everybody, thank you. So we need to get our